It's not exactly a secret that George Lucas, since the sale to Disney, hasn't exactly been happy with the direction that Star Wars decided to take. Now, he's spoken out a handful of times about it. We even got an admission from Bob Iger specifically that George Lucas felt betrayed by what they did to Star Wars. Now, I personally think that once he made that decision to sign on the dotted line and sell, that even if he disagrees with it, it's not the end of the world to him. I think a lot of fans at this point care more about the destruction of what they've done to Star Wars than George does, because he was more than willing to sign on that dotted line and get the big payout. However, throughout the course of, 13 years at this point, we've seen over and over again that despite all the promises that Lucasfilm made and that Disney made, they have no intention of holding up their side of the bargain or doing anything that George Lucas would have wanted them to do. And a few days ago, we saw another example of exactly that. Original unedited Star Wars first print screens for the first time in decades, introduced by Kathleen Kennedy. Now, this is one of those things that there's been a lot of arguments from fans about for a very long time. A lot of people did not like the changes for the special editions, and they've been very vocal about that for decades and decades. George Lucas was also very adamant that this is what he wanted for the movie, and he never wanted that original print screened ever again. Even to the point where a lot of people made up fake things that were in the contract that you were never allowed to show this ever again, right? But it was crystal clear that George Lucas did not want people watching that version of the movie. That happens to be the version that a lot of people saw in theaters way back in 1977, the thing that made them fall in love with Star Wars. So I understand the people that do prefer that version. However, George didn't want that out there. He made changes. He liked the changes, and he didn't want people seeing the original. Well, doesn't matter, because Lucasfilm's going to co-sign it anyway. Star Wars boss Kathleen Kennedy addresses confusion over illegal screening of the original film. And yes, Kathleen Kennedy personally endorses rare 1977 Star Wars theatrical cut screening that George Lucas always opposed. So let's get into this, and we'll get into Kathleen Kennedy's comments about it as well. Star Wars boss says it's remarkable that the first print of George Lucas's 1977 original was found and screened after decades. Discovery called a miracle. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy made a surprise appearance on opening night of the BFI Film on Film Festival in London, where the ultra-rare original first print of George Lucas's Star Wars was being screened. The BFI's shocking discovery of the print and the announcement it would be screened publicly caused a stir among Star Wars fans earlier this year, as Lucas has always been vocal about his dislike of this print and famously went on to tinker with the movie. And we know we don't have to go through all of the changes that occurred in the special editions, anything like that. George Lucas has always defended his right to tinker with the original cut of Star Wars, notably once telling the AP, "I'm sorry you saw a half-completed film and fell in love with it, but I wanted it the way I want it to be." As a result, some Star Wars fans were uneasy about the original print's discovery. Kennedy told the crowd at the BFI Film on Film Festival she was in attendance in order to legitimize the original print being shown amid concerns from Star Wars fans that it wouldn't be what Lucas wanted. What about that? You're going to legitimize because you're at Lucasfilm. That doesn't do anything to ease people's minds about what George Lucas would feel about this at all in any way. But this is part of a pattern of behavior. And look, George Lucas signed his rights away. Bottom line, I think it is the biggest mistake we've ever seen in the history of Star Wars for him to sign those rights away. Bottom line, it was his decision. He did it, right? And now here we all have the consequences. But that doesn't mean that people should feel like, well, Kathleen Kennedy's there, so I guess it means the company's good with it. So George, how could George be good with this? His entire fucking life, he's said that he doesn't want people seeing that version. Yet here we are. And here's the quote. "It's incredible folklore," Kennedy said. "Even when I came into the company, there was endless conversation about where everything was and what was in fact the first print. And it's quite remarkable. What you're going to see is in fact the first print, and I'm not even sure there's another one like it. It's that rare. There's so much tinkering that's gone on over the years and things that George decided, I'm going to change this, I'm going to try that. And then everybody kind of lost track of what it was." Look, I get the idea that if somebody found an original print that they would want to show it to people. And I've had people have sent me the despecialized edition and stuff like that before. And I understand why people prefer it more than the special editions. 100%. However, to have the president of the company with George's name on it, who has been in charge of all these things that have completely disappointed George Lucas and gone in a direction that he felt betrayed with, to then show up there to try to legitimize this screening, even though George Lucas has said for years and years and years and decades that he didn't want people seeing that. It is completely and 100% on brand for Disney Star Wars, because they have been desecrating the legacy of George Lucas since he signed on the dotted line and sold this company to Disney.